Hello, you beautiful people out there. Thank you for joining us once again for another episode of the Film Fetishists podcast. I am Bryan. I'm joined by my friend Justin and Dahlia. And today we're going to talk about two different movies. Gaslight, released in 1944, directed by George Cuker, and Sunset Boulevard, directed by Billy Wilder, released in 1950. So we're going to talk about how the gothic romance elements of Gaslight are sort of precursors for the noir elements that would become to see within the genre of noir, and specifically in Sunset Boulevard. So I just want to start us off with Gaslight. I want to talk about the intro, the opening sequence of this film. To me, although it isn't exactly the same as sort of the noir opening sequence, it has that sort of same sense of this foreboding opening. As we see that time and time again in noir, it sort of starts at the end of the film or the present of the film, and then sort of we see sort of the background history of that. But so this movie starts off with Paula's mother being killed, this famous singer being killed, and the lighting here is very different than what we see in the sequences after that, where it's all happy. It's not necessarily noir. It's not as horizontal as you see in the noir films, but it's still this darkly lit, grim setting, and it just feels noir, and it's sort of this setting a standard for what's going to come, and sort of this drab sort of atmosphere. And specifically, there's this moment to me that I very much stood out in noir. It's sort of the end of this opening where Paula is being told that she's going to move, and she's specifically told that like you can't think about the past, you have to think about the future. And like in this very darkly lit scene, you see sort of just her face in this very dark atmosphere, and the camera sort of just zooms in on her and her like sadness, and bam, that's the end of the opening. And to me, that felt like something like straight out of noir. Like this sort of would be kind of a precursor for late noir films. What do you guys think?
So yeah, I see a ton of parallels between noir and Gaslight in the opening scene. If we were to remove this kind of hazy memory like filter that's put over it, it's kind of this glow. I don't know the exact form term for it, but like if you were to strip that from it, I think the lighting would be more apparent, would like be like really have these apparent like hardline shadows over the characters and over the sets and the the backgrounds that would make it look extremely noir, like that, where you would mistake it for a noir like unquestionably. And then like also, as we've learned and as we like read about in Hughes' paper, lighting is a big part of what makes a noir, and we start off the movie looking at the light, and so like the opening credits have the gaslight that is turned on, and then like the very first moment you see, it's very dark and someone's lighting the gaslight, and then like on top of that we see a picture of the newspaper, which is like we see the newspaper headline, which is like a trope of noir to kind of ground it in reality. And like it's the headline says Thornton Square murder unsolved, strangler still at large. It is exactly what
that's really a good point, actually.
Examples of noir. It's almost is noir in arguably. And then
I think like if we talk about if we're talking about the opening, like it isn't as like you see like a lot of times noir, like the film starts off with the present tense, and then like we see the background, and then it cuts back to the present tense. And Gaslight, it is also like a linear story though, so it isn't the exact same, but like it still kind of sets that tone for it, and it kind of sets up the lighting for it. And like you should take out that sequence, and I think the film would largely still make sense. But and what kind of makes it a sort of noir opening is that not exactly how like we see in noir films, but like that sort of element of the past then comes back right at the end when we find out that this dude that's been manipulating her the entire time was actually there. Greg or Anton, and when our Sergis Boyer was there. So like again, not the exact same as noir. It's not kind of back to the past. Or I'm sorry, it's not kind of back to the present, but it's still bringing this element of the opening right back to the sort of the end of the film.
Yeah.
And I was gonna say that scene really reminded me of like the scene in Double Indemnity where we see at the beginning of the film Walter Neff, and then like at the end we see Walter F. still talking to the same recording. It's like we're seeing them do the same thing in real time, and that's kind of like how I felt about that scene. And I think that kind of like it does set the tone it does set the tone a lot for like the film and like how it can be perceived as noir, even though it is like a gothic romance.
Yeah,
and I think like those aspects of like lighting and like the aspect of the first scene coming back to the ending is what really makes this feel very noir, as opposed to like other gothic romances that I feel like I've seen, or that maybe you guys have seen.
So now I do think there is like a bit of a rebuttal to this though, because the intro to traditional noir shows like the aftermath of whoever has been killed. And you see that in Sunset Boulevard, where you actually see the body being photographed by reporters and police probably as well. And then you hear the narration of the one who has been killed. Whereas in Gaslight, it's kind of flipped a little bit, but the same attitude is taken. So we have like this, it's transformed into, instead of using like showing the exact crime and showing a jump forward in time and then a jump back with the narration, it uses foreshadowing in a way that has the same effect, but is also obviously different.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree.
Oh yeah, and then like the kind of the proof of that is that you see the toxic traits that are so present in this movie. You see them like demonstrated in the beginning, and you see like these red flags that we notice, that we as the viewer notice, but that Paula, that's her name, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that she overlooks and that she is not aware of. And that's what makes the movie so like alarming and so like almost infuriating in a good way. It's for us to watch because we're aware of what is going on from the very beginning, even though and she isn't. So it's different from noir, where it's like we're aware because we jumped forward in time. We're aware because we're aware of the present. We know what we can interpret the things from an outside perspective, the things being said.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that point. Like, I feel like you brought up Paula, and I think that's something that I really like kind of wanted to talk about in like relation to like Gaslight and like other and like noir films, is that like in I feel like in this romantic gothic, I can't speak for all of them, there's like a lack of a femme fatale.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that like really takes away from like some of the noir aspects that could be seen in the film, because I feel like true noir to me, and I feel like my definition of the class I've been taking, definitely needs like that femme fatale character, and I feel like there's a big lack of that in Gaslight. And I feel like for me, after watching Sunset Boulevard, I really wanted to see like this kind of like evil, like femme fatale woman,
Yeah.
who I'm definitely
Wait, a thought just kind of popped into my head. One of the who is it? One of the maids in the house, the younger one.
She
is kind of a femme fatale. Like, she isn't like in the plot the same like thing, but she is, I think, sort of portrayed as this woman that is like using her
this suspicious woman.
Yeah,
I think
Yeah,
she's
but like
kind of like
she's
like the infant version of a femme fatale in a way.
Yeah.
I that's you're right. There is no femme fatale compared to Sunset Boulevard. Sunset Boulevard has an obvious femme fatale. Like more obvious than even some of the like, prime examples of noir that we've looked at. And I think that is ultimately what separates the two films, like what makes one not noir and one the other. And so like in a way, Gaslight is this like baby version of a noir that's like not developed enough to be noir, so it's still gothic because the gothic traits overshadow the noir traits that it has. But then you have like these little hints at what is to come in the future of film noir. With Nancy, she there's that moment in Gaslight where she is kind of seducing Gregory. What should I refer to Gregory as? Anton? Gregory?
Anton's fine. I don't want to say sir, just boil a bunch of times or whatever.
Yeah. Well, anyway, like seducing him when they're talking about the like what was it called? They're like talking about going to the musical. And she's like almost hinting that she wants him to come along with, and I thought he was going to go along with to kind of further prove
it was definitely like a really flirtatious conversation.
Yeah. Well,
and it did feel like
unfaithful.
She, if we're looking at Nancy as like a sort of like a prototype of a femme fatale, she is, trying to better her position with him so she can kind of like have an easier or better role within that house. And so like by flirting with him, she's trying to manipulate him and exert more control. Like I don't think it ends up being played out like with her really gaining control. Like I feel like it wouldn't have film noir, but like you can kind of see that element kind of beginning right there.
Yes, I feel like had they developed like her character a little bit more, she definitely would have been like a femme fatale. Maybe not like a main character femme fatale, but definitely like someone on the sidelines. Because like I think when I think of she does have potential. She has a lot of potential to be a femme fatale. I just think the directors didn't like see the like obviously they weren't going in the direction of noir, so she wasn't. She's like
exactly.
Yeah. She's like the precursor to the femme fatale.
Exactly. And it's like it's important to remember that this came. It's like noir movies saw Gaslight and they saw if Anton is not going to like if we're not going to follow his arc of like completely taking control and like hijacking Paula's like entire existence, like if they're not going to follow that, they could actually go the route of having Nancy like start to influence Anton. And
I feel like you might be reaching a little bit in how you're like I understand what you're saying, but I feel like you might be reaching a little bit in how you're describing. Like I don't know.
Well, she's struggling for power though.
But I don't know if we can say like filmmakers of the time looked at Gaslight and said, "All right, take away the Anton."
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because there's so many other movies to think about in context. Yeah, no.
Yeah, exactly.
Right about that.
But no, definitely do agree.
It's like they do have parallels though. Like
exactly.
Could have rewritten this story, and I feel like it would have been in character of her in her power, her struggle to kind of be the top dog in this house. That where she could have been like in a different movie. I don't know. I mean, the point's kind of falling away from me.
Yeah. I think we reached the climax of that point.
Yeah.
But yeah. So what else do we kind of feel were like these kind of like first elements in noir? Justin, do you want to talk about something?
Yeah. So lighting is like obviously a really important aspect of noir, and we see like really notable features in both movies. In Gaslight, like the beginning scene is lit in noir style, but on top of that, like the entire movie kind of is based on like the lighting goes down when something bad is happening. That's the whole concept in the movie. So not only in the beginning do we see these shadows like hit like that hide the characters and that cause this sense of anxiety and fear, like hide characters in shadows. You see that in particular just before Anton goes to lower the light before he's leaving the house. The lighting in Gaslight is more of kind of a message than like a literal thing. Especially after we're done with that intro sequence, because after the intro, the characters are generally very well lit. The characters are generally evenly lit, not very noir. Like the parallel there is not necessarily, doesn't really exist. You don't see a lot of Venetian blinds. And so that's where we see kind of the separation from noir. However, you have this concept of whenever Anton leaves the house to go crawl around in the attic and scare the shit out of Paula, the light goes down because he turns his light up. And so it is, and
it's
that
like literal. It's kind of like a literal interpretation.
It's like a literal, it's like a literal interpretation of the light, of literal like representation of the lighting of noir without actually adjusting the lighting. Because the thing is, the lights don't dim down that much. Like the lights
Mhm.
don't dim the scene.
Yeah, like
down.
the set, like the visuals of the scene don't
Yeah,
really change
yeah.
like goes up or
So
down.
it's like this infant version of noir lighting, but it's done in such a sly way that you're not actually looking at the result of the lighting, where instead you're looking at the lighting itself. And that is what indicates whether you should be scared or whether you should be anxious in a scene. And so we're watching the lighting, we're watching the flame while they're talking. Especially I'm talking about the end scene, the scene towards the end of the movie where she's talking to the detective. The detective's name is it's Bryan, right? Bryan Carmen.
Yes.
Yeah. Where they're having their little talk, and I am just constantly like, lighting is going up, and then they comment on it. So it's this diegetic like representation of noir lighting that doesn't actually light things like it is in noir.
No, I didn't. That wasn't the anxiety-inducing light. Was something that I didn't really even notice until you like brought it up. And like
What?
I, the in the ending in the scene
Mhm.
towards the end that you were talking about. And I like that's definitely something that I can think about that I can definitely see like parallels in within noir. You know, like in the sense that like when I feel like when there's a very intense scene with like the hard-boiled detective, the lighting is definitely like very dark around him, and then he's very like illuminated by this other light to like make the viewers feel the anxiety or like the tension that he's having.
Mhm. Yeah, no, and that's the point. In Gaslight, to be just remembered is that the lighting itself is not, it's not the result. It's the action. So, and that's why it's all diegetic in Gaslight. Now I'm gonna bring up a moment in Sunset Boulevard, where so basically the characters are noticeably perfectly lit in Sunset Boulevard, which would be surprising. However, their costumes actually lend to the noir lighting. So basically, so you see Norma and Joe both, you see them with, you can see their face, you can see everything on their face perfectly with no shadows cast across it generally. But then you have their costumes, which are like really dark and contrasty and are like full of detail, but a lot of it is hidden. And then you can see their hands. So it's like you can only see their face and their hands, and that is it. And it is so ever present with not just them, but then there's also the butler. Is it Max? Yeah, I think. But anyway, they like, we have this trope of the of seeing characters' faces, but then having the rest of the set and the rest of everything hidden in the shadows, and it makes us really uneasy. It makes the environment seem very like scary and
Yeah, I
like
think it serves like two purposes. Like it kind of fits that kind of noir chiaroscuro lighting where, it kind of sets that uneasy tone, but it also, allows us to focus right on the characters' faces. So it kind of like this double purposes, and we can look, we're really focused on their expression and their emotions.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's like a really good point. Um, that's something like in comparison to like Gaslight, I kind of talked about it earlier, like how the lighting like intensifies like the feelings that the characters are having. And it is like the lighting being like as perfect as it is really like makes the viewers feel emotions even when there's like no dialogue or just music there, and you just see like the characters in the scene kind of like commiserating about like
Are you
what's
talking about in
going on
Gaslight?
in Sunset Boulevard.
Sunset Boulevard. Okay.
Sunset Boulevard.
In Sunset
Right.
Boulevard. It's definitely like something that I feel like I didn't get as much in Gaslight, in comparison, because it's a like the genre of gothic romance I feel like doesn't put as much like emphasis on lighting as noir films do, because I feel like I see like more lighting techniques being used in noir than I do in like other films.
Yeah,
But, like,
compared to
Very
Gothic,
true.
where the emphasis is placed on more set, I think.
yeah, and this is placed more on like emotion, like through lighting. which is
Yeah,
something I
so
definitely don't see in Gotham.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay, so we definitely sort of see how like the lighting of Gaslight in a way sort of transitions into like it's sort of a precursor for noir lighting. You can definitely make that case. And I think it's fairly obvious, but I think we should at least touch on it for a second. How like yes, we know that like we discussed it before, like the opening of Gaslight is sort of like almost a noir opening in a sense. And I know I think it's pretty obvious how we see that in Sunset Boulevard itself, because it opens with our main character being killed, his own narration, and then we end up seeing him being killed in the end. I think it's important to note that. Sort of femme fatale character. So if we can talk about the femme fatale character in Sunset Boulevard, definitely a very interesting point of conversation. Because to me, at least, oh my God, what is her name?
Norma.
Nora. So like, importantly, Norma, like unlike the sort of femme fatale prototype we talked about in Gaslight, isn't like manipulative. She doesn't use her like sort of like sexuality to manipulate our main like the main protagonist, which I think is a
If anything, she's unattractive.
yeah, at least to him, like it's sort of like a departure from like what we normally see in noir.
And what's further like fascinating about that study is that he's in a way using her. He thinks he's using her in the beginning, so he thinks he's kind of using his good looks and kind of taking advantage of the things that femme fatales usually would take advantage of, and like in order for monetary gain. So like in the beginning, it seems like he's trying to exploit this wealth and power that she has, at least from what I gathered.
Yeah, but I don't know if it was like he's exploiting her like with his youth and his looks. I think he was just needed a writer originally, and that's what he was there.
But the thing is, like, she becomes attracted to him.
Yeah. But I don't think his intent was to be like, oh, I'm gonna seduce you.
But I think oh, Dahlia, go ahead.
I was gonna say that instead of like using her like looks or like sexuality to seduce men, it's more like she uses like the power that she has in general over him. Like,
Yeah,
like
she
uses
the looks
yeah.
there's more of a power dynamic going on with this femme fatale in comparison to other femme fatales that we've seen. Because traditionally the femme fatale would be younger than the man.
I think she also identifies as a like traditional femme fatale character. So I think she wants to be using her looks to take advantage of people because she wants to be this gorgeous, perfect Hollywood goddess. But she's old and she's kind of like not what she identifies as in her head. That's not what she is in real life.
That's a good point.
So when she tries, it doesn't work. Like when she tries to take advantage of him, like using her sexuality, and like when she tries to kind of reward when she tries to like reward him.
Like she almost kind of like uses what femme fatales are kind of all like in other noirs, like what femme fatales are always trying to get. Like they're trying to get wealth and power, but she's actually using that wealth and power to manipulate him. She's definitely like kind of inverting what the femme fatale character usually does. But it's in a similar sense to Gaslight, you can see how like her like power and control is exerted over him. Like there's this one scene where like they're just in the car and like he goes to chew gum. She's just like, I really have to chew gum. And like he just takes it out. Like he's really succumb to her like control.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. That's kind of like that rolls back into the point that I was making. Because I feel like with the age difference here between the man and the woman, there's like the gender reversal there that we don't necessarily always see with people in noir films. And I feel like the power dynamic is very much shifted in the sense that it's like, I personally was like, this woman's kind of giving me like Walter Neff, like all of these other hard-boiled detective, older man vibes. And this guy is giving me like younger woman vibes, and I just feel like there's a big gender reversal within this femme fatale that I felt was like that was just something that I never seen before with someone in a power dynamic like this.
Okay, so I think what's interesting here is that we have a younger man being taken advantage of by an older woman, and that age dynamic is like kind of the opposite of what you would expect, because generally when you see a older man taking advantage of, or be an older man getting involved with a younger woman in noir, usually it's like you expect it to be okay, but then she ends up like stabbing him in the back and taking advantage of him. And that's how the femme fatale trope emerges. And it also like ties into the idea of unsuspicion, because you have like the young, innocent, naive thing taking advantage of the older thing that is not. And so in Sunset Boulevard, it's kind of the gender dynamic is still there, but it's not, the age dynamic is unexpected.
That's very true. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I definitely agree. But I think another aspect of like Joe Gillis that I kind of find interesting, if we look at it's like Sunset Boulevard is like largely devoid of like normal like noir crime, like even like violence, and like it's kind of like not there. But like Joe Gillis is the hermetic boundary he's crossing in this film is like one of like this strange home with this strange woman. And I think there's a like a very direct parallel to Gaslight, where like the hermetic boundary being crossed is the home in that one. Like these two houses of characters
trapped
being
in there.
exactly, these two characters being trapped in two different houses. And the hermetic boundary being crossed isn't always crime. It's like this unsuspicious. It's sort of this house that you wouldn't be suspicious of.
So they're very similar in the sense that they both have a character trapped in a mansion it's like a gothic mansion. Both mansions are very gothic, and you have a character trapped in it and being taken advantage of in it, like psychologically. And
I think
that's the parallels. Yeah,
and I think like Bryan, like Cameron's character in like Gaslight, he can be seen as sort of like a prototype or like a precursor for like the noir PI, because he's the one character that's like suspicious of that house. Like there's a shot of like the couple walking in front of him, like Anton and Paula, and like he sees them, and like he's like his children don't pay attention, they look at him, but he picks his hat up and like nods at her, and like then sort of like he, like the noir PI, he like he's not sure what's happening, but he knows to be suspicious. Everybody from the brief intermission, don't question why it happened, but so yeah, back to my main point. I just want to, so looking at Sunset Boulevard and kind of comparing this whole idea of like the PI as a hermetic boundary crosser, the one who crosses into this criminal world. We see it in Gaslight, and now if we look at Sunset Boulevard, unlike a lot of noirs, like crime isn't really at the center of this film. But if we look at Joe Gillis and his relationship with Nora Desmond, and like I feel like he's that character, the one character in the film who really crosses the threshold into this sort of world kind of stuck in the past. Again, like not crime, but like just this altogether kind of different world. And he's the only person that really sees that. And he's sort of like our avenue, our conduit to see that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I agree. I think that like we mentioned this before the break, but both characters are trapped in a house, and that's the concept, and that's really what brings these two films together and makes it really effective to compare them to one another. Joe Gillis, he goes in thinking he's going to come out with like gaining, like with personal gain, and then he, all the while, like up until kind of towards the end, he thinks he's kind of in control of the situation, I think. And then like surprise to him, he's the one who falls victim. And then like you said that you don't see crime in Sunset Boulevard. Now there isn't an overall like theme of crime, but there is the crime of the murder. There's the murder.
Yeah, of course. I'm saying outside of that.
Yeah. So yes, that's true. But then there's I think that where the criminal element is sacrificed, it kind of makes up for it in the deception and like the lying, like where Donna is, what's her, it's Norma
Desmond.
Yeah,
Norma Desmond, baby.
I'll fix that in post. But where Norma so she's like making this false perception of herself, and she's both lying to herself and lying to everyone else with the like over beauty, you know, like over like Hollywood makeover that she gets, like the really over the top towards the end of the film, where she's like, you know, covered in these like weird like beauty products that look like almost make her into a monster, but like
Yeah.
in the hopes of making her good. I think that like dictates this sort of deception that is in place of the crime. So it's this like lying to everyone, including herself, and like forming this world and manipulating this person. And that's where the crime is, even though it's not like illegal, you know, it's like almost, you know, a moral crime, in my opinion.
I guess that kind of fits in, especially like, I mean, we know noir is often kind of dealing with a morally corrupt character. Sometimes we empathize with them, sometimes we don't. And I guess that sort of makes sense. Like her lying to Joe Gillis and his manipulation or her manipulation of him is, I guess, yeah, like you're saying, it's like the only kind of really crime we have to deal with for most of the movie.
Do you agree that he is like that he goes into this relationship with Norma kind of expecting to take advantage of her and use her wealth and make money?
I mean,
Yeah.
he goes in kind of like initially just being like, I'm a writer, fix her crappy script and get paid for it, a bunch of money. I don't know, like after that, I'm not sure if like how much he stays with her, like for the money. I don't know if it's really worth speculating about.
Dahlia, what do you think?
I think that it could be a little bit of like both the money and then kind of like what Bryan was talking about. Because like I definitely see both aspects, but like for me, I more so see the point that Bryan was making about like
Yeah.
fixing the script, and then it's kind of like things happen.
Yeah, I think it evolves. So I revise my statement to being like he goes
Yeah,
in
yeah,
initially
definitely.
with this like kind of nefarious purpose, and then it evolves slowly, but then in order to keep up his like, you know, keep his manlyhood in a sense. So yeah, he goes and tells his mistress and like keeps his manhood by like saying, "Oh, you know, this is my plan all along," in a sense. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that in Gaslight, the trope of unsuspicion can be seen when Paula and Gregory Anton are going to like that concert, and she just starts crying, and it's kind of like the people around her think that she's like that she's crazy or like having this manic episode, when in reality she's really like the victim of this crime.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Like,
that
the
definitely
very
feels.
more aspect
And like it's and yeah, and it's important to note also the pocket watch was so she starts crying because like Anton whispers that like, where's my pocket watch, and like reveals that it's missing, and then he like goes and picks up her bag and like does this horrible display.
Like something that you can definitely see in noir. Like it just like some sort of precursor for like unsuspicion in general. Just like everyone around them, except for
It's public shame.
except for the Bryan dude, everyone around them is just so unaware of what's really going on, like right below the surface, like right in front of their faces. Like this deception is going on right in front of them. They're completely unaware. They just think this woman is have some sort of emotional breakdown. You know?
I think the weapon of public shame is much more powerful than like really any sort of you know, it's much more hurtful to like have him force you to embarrass yourself in public. It relies on the public's unsuspicion. It relies on also like these oblivious bystanders, which those go hand in hand, unsuspicion and oblivious bystander. Like it relies on that trope and of them like operating the way they would in noir. Um, and so it's essentially like Gaslight seems to be already using the assumptions that we rely on to create the situations you see in noir. It's already using that, even though it's like, you know, early stages. It's a precursor, as we were saying before.
Yeah, yeah. And I think we can see some sort of moments of like of unsuspicion in Sunset Boulevard. That are sort of as a noir, it's like very aware. And I don't know, it's sort of aware of what it's doing. So when Joe Gillis and Norma Desmond like go out, and she needs cigarettes or whatever, and like he stops at the convenience store and he goes in and he sees the couple and they have, and they just think it's a normal conversation with the guy. They just think, whatever, they don't know what's really going on behind, or what's really going on in Joe Gillis's life, where he's like in this really strange, complex relationship where he's being emotionally manipulated, but he's also getting something out of it. They have no idea.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, do we have any other any closing thoughts, Dahlia and Bryan? I mean, yeah, I think that sums it up pretty well. These movies are clearly like they're so it's so great to compare these two movies because what happens in them is like essentially it's so similar, like story wise, aside from all the stuff.
They're
like
very like at the surface story, very similar.
Yeah, and we're not analyzing that. Like we could talk forever about that, but like that's what makes these two examples like contrast so well in terms.
I think
of
like they're
whether
perfect
something's
films
noir or
to
not.
compare. Has one as like a gothic drama or a gothic
Exactly.
romance, and one as a noir.
Exactly.
Similar, but so what is ever different about them, or what is sort of similar about them, is gonna like highlight the differences of like the two genres.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, I think that wraps us up this week up pretty well. I love, these were my two favorite movies of the semester. So these
they're very good. Bold statements. I don't know if I agree 100%, but they were very good.
Yeah. No. I know that's a subjective experience, but I personally enjoyed talking about them with you guys, and enjoyed watching them, and look forward to what's in store for us next week.
All right. We will see you all next week after we watch some more movies.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Trying to tell
By the
you
way,
how to
for
say
everyone that cares.
Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, I love that.
That is nice.
I paid $7 for it.
That's not bad.
Well, that's a good
bad.
price for a candle.
So the big question we always gonna ask ourselves, we always have to look at every movie and see, because they're everywhere. Who has a fetish? Okay, who does it? Who has a fetish?
Ever present.
I got one.
The maid in Gaslight, the little baby femme fatale, Nancy. She's definitely got a thing for DILFs. She loves DILFs.
There's also maybe something to be said about Anton's affinity for crawling around in dingy attics to scare his wife.
I don't understand why he's so. Well, I mean, part of it, he was also doing that to get like the jewels. This man's
true.
Those fucking like that dude is pretty like living already a very lavish lifestyle, seemingly.
Like, why does he need to completely kill this woman inside?
I mean, theoretically, was he even working during this time period? No, he was he was just going every night and freaking looking for the jewels. So why does he need
jobless?
Because I think he just likes it, likes the idea of it. Okay, but I have very bold. This is so bad. All the lights getting gaslit. I think she does.
Victim blaming.
How do you not freaking? It's so bad to say. Oh my god.
All right. Well, that's a very.
But how does she? How do you not leave that situation already? How do you not get back there?
That's like the trope of victim. I have one last fetish that I would like to offer, and it is that Norma has both like a Hollywood like attention fame type fetish, but she is like completely living in a fantasy world the entire film. Like she has her eyes shut like almost the entire time. Like there's like she'll be like shutting her eyes and be like, hey babe, whatever, like talking to. Is that all we have?
I believe it is all we have for today. But remember that fetishisms, they're everywhere and they will always be with you.
Oh, I shouldn't have taped this. It's on my hair. Ow.
May the force be with you.
Well, anyway, thank you, Hugh. We'll see you next week. Bye.
See you guys.